was 1984 when the train arrived, stacked with PHBs and a Dungeon Master's Guide. I took my friends out back and we bought a pair of dice, and that's when we laid down a roll with the mice. That's right, we fought a mouse, a giant centipede. We fought a troll and some dragons indeed. It was what we were doing. It was 1984. It was a crazy time. I don't know if I'm singing Bob Seger or maybe it's the boss.
I mean, that was pretty good. I'm not
The
like,
rhyme
wholly
scheme
disappointed.
went off. Not wholly. That's the best endorsement you can expect from Dom Zook. Let's be honest. Hey everyone, welcome to Disorganized Play, a show where I entertain myself by trying to sing theme songs in the style that chat requests. I am no Wayne Brady, is what we have discovered.
Who is, though?
To be fair, Wayne Brady practiced each and every one of those song styles, like, relentlessly.
Yes.
I'm going to give you a little behind-the-scenes peek at the improv curtain, which is when you're in a comedy sports style show, you have rehearsals, and you rehearse stuff like, okay, we're going to do a Shakespeare play right now. Your suggestion is baked beans, go! And then you will practice doing the form, you'll rehearse it. So that when, oh, hey, how's it going? Welcome.
Wow.
So glad to see you. I can't remember your first name.
Adam?
Is it Adam?
Is it Adam?
Adam from Rivertown Comics? Maybe so, but yes.
I assume because it's Rivertown Adam.
Okay, I can't read the name. I can't read that.
Adam!
I'm sorry, it's green on gray. I'm an old man. Adam, great to see you. Yes, Adam runs a very cool comic shop in my hometown back in Minnesota, and is keeping all of the nerd girls fully stocked with indie comic books.
Awesome.
Doing God's will there in the heartland.
So when is the
country.
statue of you going up in Rivertown?
Not anytime soon. Let's be honest. He's abandoned us for Hollywood.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
typical Minnesotan.
Yes, that's what's going on there. So yes, Adam sold me my my limited edition, the alternate copy of Xanathar's God.
Very nice.
Like the last one. So look, I got sent out here for a better sculpt, and look how I ended up. Yes, so welcome. So good to see you here in the chat today.
So many Adams potentially running stores in chat.
Oh, awesome!
Great.
That's very cool, Tom Kaiser. Awesome, very good. I'm a big believer in trying to support your friendly local game store. I know that we all want to save as much money as possible, and it's the nerds' quintessential kind of lament of like how much RPG books cost, and wow, isn't it just easier to order stuff on Amazon? But I have made it my own personal pledge to try and buy as much of my actual gaming books off of at the store. At the store, I just went into Emerald Knights here on Friday and reserved my copies of Dragon Heist and the Undermountain game and the new Art and Arcana book that they announced too.
That's really
I've got on the list for that.
I got my Mordenkainen's from a store down Burbank Way.
Yes. So, big ups. And I will say that the reason I feel like that's important is, first of all, it gives people like an actual face to the game, right? So like they get to have a moment of interaction with a real human who probably, hopefully, has expertise in like giving them recommendations about what types of games that they play, and like helps bring them into the hobby. Obviously, there's a financial incentive for them to do that, but also just provides like a space and community for people to learn about the game and maybe connect with other gamers and whatnot. And I think that's important. As much as we do stuff over the Twitch and over Roll20 or whatever you may do online gaming, I do think one of the things that's so amazing about our hobby is the fact that like people get together and tell a story together, right?
Yeah.
So that's me. That's the deal.
Kudos to you guys.
Yes, thanks for joining us. You're gonna give us. We're getting free advertising. All right,
Oh.
very good. In Utah one day. That's fine.
Yeah.
We'll take free anything. To be honest.
This is all good. Yeah, we will. This is all good to know when I plan my one-day road trip to Gen Con.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I will say a lot of things. I am jealous when Wizards used to do the nerd train where they would leave Seattle or Renton on whatever it was, like a Saturday or a Sunday, and then they would just take the Amtrak all the way to Indianapolis, and they would game on the train for 3 days. Just
Yeah.
I was like, I want to do this trip. I don't know what it is.
Do they not do that anymore?
I don't know that they still. Well, they don't go to Gen Con anymore, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
maybe we need to start that.
the saving
up again.
throw, silver bullet. The saving throw, silver bullet. I did it.
Yes.
All right.
I smell like Kickstarter.
Wow. Reserve your seats.
We're gonna buy a train.
All right. What are we doing today?
Little kid Dom, life dream fulfilled.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Buying a train. Were you a train kid?
I was a train kid.
HO scale or the smaller?
I had HO and I had N-gauge.
Okay. Yeah, we had those.
Yeah, and I had a little bit of a Lionel kind of thing, but not really. I had bits and pieces of Lionel, but never a full set.
I don't remember which one Lionel is.
Lionel was like the three tracks, basically, and it was the big in like the 50s and 60s.
Ooh.
But
we had some of that
actually for a long time, but it got kind of taken over by HO gauge, which was a popular, the most popular.
When I was a kid, our house was so old that it still had a coal room that you would, there was the lid that they would dump coal down, and then you'd use that to stoke your furnace overnight and whatnot. So there was a room dedicated to storing coal. Obviously, we didn't use it for that. We had natural gas heat, but that's where my dad set up. The room was maybe, I don't know, he set up a setup that was probably a third the size bigger than the table here, right? And he cut it out, so like there was these giant sheets of plywood that ran around the perimeter of the room, but then he cut out like a circular notch so you could stand in the middle and the train would go around you.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing. Yeah.
If you can use bits, you could buy a train.
Yes, very good. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? So this is our GM chatback and prep show, right? So it doesn't get deep into exactly the events that we're going to prep. We don't ever get too deep into that nitty gritty, but we do get into sort of my approach, what I'm thinking about in terms of prepping for tomorrow night's session, right? So we've kind of combined this whole thing into a little bit of our chat back. Let's review what happened last week, and a little bit of like, okay, let's talk about where are we at in the campaign or in the adventure, and what sort of issues are converging, and what sort of issues are we sort of like have we kind of tossed by the wayside. So today we are going to talk about kind of four things. One of them I didn't really quite get on the overlay here, but we're going to talk about session highlights from last week. We're going to talk about forming the party. We're going to talk about plot lines versus sandbox, or on Twitter you may have seen me refer to that as planned encounters versus a sandbox style adventure. And then finally, sort of as part of that, we're going to take a look at plot radar. Now, I've already done the plot radar. I literally did it 15 minutes ago, so we've taken a picture and we'll just talk through it rather than sitting here and kind of like working through it together. Just saves us a little time. If we want to add to it, we always have the ability to add to it. So that's the buzz. Dom, we haven't really talked about what we thought about last week's game. Do you have any highlights? Anything that stood out to you that you want to comment on or remark upon or worry about openly?
I don't know if I have anything in particular. I thought it was interesting. The memory web was a really cool kind of how that transpired. That encounter was an interesting. The descriptions and stuff of it were I think fun and creepy. And so, hey, Fuckwad, how's it going? And so I like that encounter.
Yeah, that encounter came up really late, right? I wanted to push to that one a little bit earlier, and I didn't get there. I agree. That was like, and that's the sort of thing that I want to do with this adventure. So for people who have not read the adventure, it starts off where basically sort of this web drops out of the trees on the party or something like that, and kind of starts constricting and snaring them. And as they're fighting it, when they defeat it, when they kill it, it lets loose this stream of memories of its past victims, and those get flooded into the minds of the PCs, right? And that's the inciting incident of When a Star Falls, is basically they fight a giant net. I thought, strangely, that was not particularly engaging or engrossing. It was a novel idea for 1984. But I didn't think that it really, I don't think it held. I thought it could be more engaging. One of my big issues with it is it's a very passive encounter. It just happens, and the thing falls on you, and you kill it. And then, secondly, it's not a very. It's also a passively fighting monster, right? There's just not a lot of juice to it. And so what I want to do with this adventure is not play it straight by the book, because of course I'm just genetically incapable of doing that, but take the ideas and the plot and the outline, and then where I can reskin it and make it more interesting and a little more modern and updated and dynamic for a much more story-driven style of adventuring, as opposed to what I would consider a more transactional, get XP, fight monsters, kill stuff, get treasure, etc. And we'll see that coming up when we talk about the Druid encounter, which is sort of set up as almost like a trap, like, oh, well, if you try to kill any of these guys or hurt any of these animals that he's got roaming around his compound, bad things are going to happen to you. And it's like, that's not as much of a gotcha now as it was back in the 80s, where everybody was like, oh, bears are XP, I will kill this bear.
Right.
Oh, he's got this staff and all these potions and magic items laying around, I will take them because I need them. That was the style of play then, and it's certainly a fine and enjoyable way to game, but it's not the style that we're running here on our stream or at our table.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But yeah, I was really happy with, I was especially happy with the idea that there's a memory swap, that when it attacks you successfully, it takes one of your memories, and then asking the player, what memory do you lose?
Right. Yeah.
I thought
that was the part that I thought was particularly poignant in a way, but and could certainly be made more so, but was more than getting hurt. Yeah, that was the scary part. It's like, well, wait, what do I don't even know what memory my guy has. What am I going to be losing here?
Right, right.
It's like,
it's a fun creative challenge for the player, right? Where they, it was very clear that Kyle wanted to introduce something that was personally meaningful. He didn't necessarily have that memory that. He didn't know what that was queued right up, but that's the opportunity, for them to take a moment and go and do some invention of their backstory that makes their character more realistic and more gives it more depth and shading and a real living backstory, right?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, that I'm losing the memory of that thing. So you're creating this thing that was meaningful that you now know you have to let go.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of going forward, it could be really useful to bring that thematic thing back of memories get stolen from you. And that sort of was also, presaged or foreshadowed with some of the things that Lady Kellen told them, you know, that there's madness that happens and things like that. So, in the forest and whatnot. So I think there's room to, like, we've introduced an element that we have room to expand on if we decide to actually create a theme out of it, which I think we could. So yeah, I think that was certainly the big highlight for me, as I wanted to get into that combat. We got in and out of that combat. It was about 3 rounds, right? You know, my goal is to run 3-round combats, maybe 4 rounds. And we did that. It still took us 45 minutes.
Everyone's getting used to their characters.
I think it's just the nature of D&D combat, you know? By the time you get around and they decide what they want to do, I do think that Havana is still trying to find, like, okay, well, in a straight up fight, what's my deal? What do I do? Like, she's still getting used to that piece of it. I was kind of surprised after Amy was so happy with her magic item that she didn't unleash it, but okay, that was surprising to me.
Yeah.
If you are a Patreon backer, the magic items that I created for the 4 members of the party are in our Patreon folder for you, so you can check that out. She's working on her character sheet as we speak.
Yeah,
Very
she
good.
just went live.
Nice. So yeah, I think that was the big showcase encounter for me out of last week's session was that memory exchange mechanic and that final fight, right? And that was that was my big planned encounter. All right, so moving on, I do want to talk about you know, I think that part of this show is, yes, I like to hold court and disperse my various theories and ideas and tips and advice on how to be a good DM, right? But I also want to use this as an opportunity to point out that despite how long I've been playing and despite how much I tweet and despite the, you know, running a show and da-da-da-da-da, I still make mistakes and do things wrong and look back and go, I should have done this differently or something else should have happened. And I feel like we learned that, or an example of that was in last session where we had to devote a chunk of the session to forming the party, right? I'm only a level 3 DM. One day, I'll be level 4.
That's me signing off.
Oh.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
That's what it will look like.
You know what this is? That's me having the universe write me a check to get promoted to. I'm using the secret on you. The law of attraction says I'm gonna write a check to myself from the universe saying level 4 promotion, level 4 DM, and then I'm gonna put that on my vision board. And when it comes true, I can take it down and savor it. It's called The Secret. Don't look it up.
Yeah, please don't
It's
look it
awful.
up.
All right. So, but no, we spent a big chunk of the session. You know, I was sort of anxious to get some of the plot underway and, you know, hopefully get into that fight before 10:45 p.m. But we had to come to an agreement at the table as to why the players were adventuring together, why the characters were adventuring together. And the players were smart enough to go, well, we don't really have a motivation that's been handed to us or built into our backstories, a natural fit. So let's at least like make a perfunctory effort to form a party here. And that was great. I mean, I'm glad that my players can take the reins in that fashion and go, okay, well, since it's not on the page, like let's make a pact here in character so that our characters kind of do care about each other or have a commitment to each other in some way, shape, or form, so that it's stated rather than it just being some sort of implicit, like, I don't know, I guess we all adventure together, right? And so I'm glad that I have players who do that. I do think that I could have saved some time at the table by introducing something maybe a little bit upstream in session 0, or putting on other backstories, or something else. You know, there's a variety of different tricks or techniques or motivations that I could have woven in there. And if I had done that, I think it would have saved some time at the table in the session that we otherwise spent like negotiating why are we as a group adventuring together. Mm-hmm. I chose not to do that. It worked out, right? Like, do I wish that maybe I had done it differently? Sure. I think that would have made it easier for the players and easier for myself. Sometimes it feels like that stuff is a little contrived. It's just a little too neat and tidy bundle. Sometimes players get what you've handed them and decide they don't like that idea and they're going to rebel against it and go, oh, no, but what if it was like this instead? And then you have a little negotiation about that, which isn't necessarily good or bad. It's just the way things shake out. Mm-hmm. But I think that it worked out. It was something that I had to kind of. One thing that I'm continually reminded of, especially doing these streaming sessions, is that yes, my responsibility is to lead the session and know where things could be headed, right? But it's also my responsibility as the DM to know when not to lead the session and let the players work through some stuff so that they know which way they want to go. If I'm continually like pulling them by the nose, then it gets a little railroady, kind of one track. The players don't really feel like they're finding their way around the story, or that they really have any responsibility or input as to how they can change the course of events. So knowing when to kind of just like lay back and go, okay, I recognize during the session they're working out what their agreement is going to be. And even if it's a little bit shallow, at least it's there, and I have to give them the opportunity to work it out. Even if I know that Lady Kellen is going to summon them in 5 minutes and give them a cohesive reason to adventure together, I have to let them at least put those roots down a little bit, because that'll only make my job easier down the road. Right? So it's that balancing act of knowing when the party is really working on something that's going to help them, or it's an element that they want to explore and will also help you in the long run, versus knowing when this is a discussion that keeps going, a tug of war back and forth in two different directions. There's no decisions or revelations that are coming out of any of this information. I need to step in and help focus the discussion so that it doesn't just bog down in this kind of endless circular morass of, well, I think we should go to the abandoned tower. Well, I think that we should go to the Riverside, flour mill or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those. It's one of those things that I realized at the end of last session, which is I could have done some more work that would have helped the group, but also the group can take care of itself, and part of them taking care of themselves is stepping back and letting them do that.
Right.
So I wish that it had been handled a little more deftly on my end, but it worked out. It worked out happily, or satisfactorily. So, Time Kaiser makes a great point, which is it's a little bit like cooking from scratch without a recipe. There's a lot of guessing. There's more guessing, honestly, on the player's part, because they don't have all of the backstory and know all of the elements that are going to arise. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times players can be intimidated by fabricating stuff out of whole cloth. Even when you say something like, "What's your favorite memory that you lose?" Part of the challenge there is they go, well, I don't know. There's not even a city named Waterdeep. Like, what do I know about this world?
Yeah.
I've gotten 3 paragraphs on it. I don't really understand what's in bounds and out of bounds. So knowing that you're putting players in that position is something that you have to be cognizant of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. It's definitely something. We do that at the beginning of every wildcard session, where Jordan always asks us a question. What's your character's favorite dessert? What what was your character's first love, or who was your character's first love? Things along those lines that we have no idea how he's using that.
Right.
But somehow he's using it, but it's like it is that there is a fear of what am I giving up here by relinquishing this information, and is that something that I have thought about that means something to me, if you don't have players who are well traveled in RP and stuff like that, that can sometimes be a pull, from them, because there's a lot going on there with that they're not used to doing. But I think it can be rewarding if you help develop them in that sense, because they start opening up and giving you more, which allows you to play more with the whole scene.
I think it's a terrific technique, and the part of it that I struggle with as a DM is I will collect that information and then I will lose track of it, right?
Sure,
like I'll forget to reintegrate it. Sometimes you collect that information and the player forgets, what was your favorite dessert? So you come like 6 sessions later and you'll be like, and they bring out lemon meringue pie.
Yeah, right.
and for whatever reason, the player who that's their favorite dessert is like, okay.
Yeah.
Like they've forgotten about it if they didn't write it down, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think it is a terrific technique. The way that I have honed it in this particular game is by asking each of the players, like, what's one thing that your character wants to accomplish or you want your character to do or accomplish during this arc.
Right.
Right? And so they ostensibly have like personal, not ostensibly, they each, other than Badger, who hasn't given me his yet, but they each have their own personal goals of things that they want to fulfill. Now we saw that last session in the mirror prophecy thing, right? So when Strumthrum got the mirror back from Talfi, she looked in the mirror and saw herself fly, right? So she saw her goal come to fruition. Whether that's the actual way that it happens or not is up for debate.
Yeah.
That's still kind of TBD. But it was a terrific way to take something that the player invented that is meaningful for their character and then reinforce it and keep introducing it as an element. And those, to me, like those goal elements are big target items that I can go, okay, I can really go after this, as opposed to incorporating a bunch of details that I might lose track of or realize like, oh, okay, they're really into mushrooms. That's easy to keep track of. But keeping track of like who their aunt's cousin's mother was, that like history type of details, that sort of nitty gritty, I have problems personally, like just keeping up with.
Right.
Maybe that's just me. And I talked about this a little bit on Twitter last week, which was I really had 2 encounters planned, and that was the possible audience with Lady Kellen. Like I knew what she was going to say, assuming that it got unlocked, and that was a pretty low-hanging fruit kind of option. So I put some time into that. And then I knew there was going to be that combat at the end, and everything else from that session, including Talfi's bizarre, vision when the, it was totally unexpected when the party goes, tell us, why don't you tell our fortunes? As a GM, when you're not prepared for that moment, it's easy for Talfi, and you saw it on the stream, to go, oh, I don't know. I'm not trained in that. I can't say whether it's going to work or not. Like to push off and go, no, I'm not going to do that. But those sorts of moments, number one, are filled with literal magic, right? You can do so many different stylistic and add so many details and all that kind of stuff, and really create sort of this powerful foreshadowing device, or employ this powerful short foreshadowing device that you really are hard put to work in other ways. And then secondly, they're irreliable. They're unreliable, right?
Yeah.
It's fortune telling, so it doesn't have to all come true, or it doesn't have to come true in the literal way that it's set forth, especially if you use symbolism and whatnot. You know, like one of the things Talfi said is, "I hear a bell ringing." Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Right, yeah.
But it sounds important, you know?
Yeah.
It sounds really cool. And it's something that we can either introduce later. I mean, basically you're given an opportunity to just like go whole hog with Schrodinger's clues, right? These open-ended little elements that the players don't know what the meaning is. They just attach a weight to them, like plot weight. They attach meaningfulness to them without understanding their actual meaning, right? So they're filled with potential and promise, and then you just keep waiting for other elements to intersect with that thing so that it starts to unfold like a flower blossoming in the sunshine, right? So if you watched on the stream or on the replay, you saw me kind of like, I don't know, I gotta do it. And I thought that was, honestly, you know, there was a bunch of improvised stuff that happened last week, but that was the moment where I was like, this is coming together. Like, I'm really enjoying this process and the way that it's rolling out with the players. Yeah. And I thought it was a meaningful experience for them as well. And that was just pure serendipity of somebody saying, I want to go, I think it was Amy saying, I want to go back and talk to Talfi and see if Talfi will read our fortunes.
Yeah.
So, I am interested in the fact that Talfi is a non-binary character. I think that is interesting to explore. I think it does provide a challenge at the table of misgendering them. I just think it makes an interesting character. I don't want to say that it makes them novel.
Right.
I think, to me, it's an element, like, it's worth introducing and exploring at the table, and I think everybody's doing a good faith effort of doing that. And I feel like it's a good piece of representation so far. It's hard because they're an NPC, right? And you know that they're a little bit lost at sea, like both literally and then sort of like figuratively within the storyline of like, I'm supposed to go here, but nobody's here to take me here. Like,
right.
Like that person is a little bit of a, they need the party's help, but I also think it provides some opportunity to explore the world in a different way. So
yeah.
All right, so that is, that's kind of where I'm at with forming the party. So tomorrow, I don't think I have anything else to say about last week's session. I enjoyed it. I felt like it could have been a little tighter if I'd done a little bit more work, but there were some great moments of improv, and I loved the way the memory web encounter was reskinned into that much more interesting and dynamic, and especially adding the element of your trading memories. That was fun. I want to use that some more because it was so cool. That's how I felt about it. In terms of this week's coming session, so where we're at is they're 1 day's travel from entering the forest. They don't really know anything about the forest. There are strange things afoot at the Circle K, if you want to call it that. There are strange things afoot in the circus, in the forest. But also they have a mission that they need to accomplish, right? So this is where we kind of like meet that weird intersection of there are planned encounters, like we talked about, I guess last week we talked about it. There are mandatory things that need to happen in order to fulfill this piece of our adventure, right? And then there are other circumstances that are getting laid on top of this that the party's also going to encounter, right? So that's where we talk about plot lines versus sandbox, or planned encounters versus letting them kind of like roam free in the forest or freely explore what's going on in the forest, right? So it becomes a little bit tricky to plot next week's session. Where we left off was Alton and Badger, for sure, have been flooded with the memories of these monks who are in this boat, right? I need to put this down too. I'll talk about it, don't worry about it. So they've been flooded with these memories. They found the corpses of the monks. Now, in the adventure as written, what happens next is the memories talk about a lot of things, but they talk about what this band of monks, what they were about when they got beset by the memory moss, which is they were on their way to go find the fallen star, right? To find the meteorite or the comet, wherever it had landed. Their job was to go and collect it, right? Mm-hmm. So really kind of in the adventure as written, there's only one thing to do, right? We know that they're from the Tower of the Heavens, but it's basically assumed that the party, once they've been injected with the memories of the monks, will adopt the monks' mission and go off and search for this thing. And one of the memories is like, go talk to this druid in the forest, da-da-da-da-da. Now, in our particular setup, they already have two missions, right? They have the mission of find out what happened to the missing druid, the grand druid of the forest, who's dead, disappeared, gone off, who knows, turned into a vampire, God only knows. Like, we don't know what's happened to him. So they have one mission, which is to find out what happened to the Grand Druid and explore his disappearance, which is what this side of the table has been given.
Right.
The other mission that has sort of been grafted onto that mission is take Talfi to the Tower of the Heavens and deliver them to their assigned station and hopefully check in on the Tower of Heavens and make sure everything's okay, right? So those two missions already exist. Now we have kind of this third thing coming in from the monks of, oh, we're going to go talk to this other guy and see if we can figure out where the star went down and go and retrieve it for our master. That's something that we have to do. So there's really, prepping for this next session, I think is fairly tricky. Because there's definitely at least like two branches to follow. Either adopt the monk's mission and go track down this druid wherever he is, or, and it gets tricky because the druid, there's already one druid that's been laid into the thing, or go to the Tower of Heavens. So they can either follow the events as outlined in the adventure and go visit the druid and track down the comet, or they can go to the Tower of Heavens and check in with them and go, well, we're here to drop off Talfi, and oh, by the way, we found these dead guys, and you might want to bury them, and if you're looking for somebody to help you out, maybe we'll help you out. Which is not an unreasonable thing for the party to decide, in my mind.
No.
Honestly, I think both of those options have kind of equal weight. So it's tricky because there are planned encounters that we need to incorporate in order to keep our plot moving forward. We've only got 6 more sessions, right? There's also an kind of what I like to call the B storyline of what's going on in the forest and whatnot, and they're going to encounter pieces of that. So to help clarify this a little bit, I use this organizational tool called Plot Radar, and we're going to bring up a picture of it. And we're not going to do the overhead camera, but we're going to bring up a picture of it so that you can take a look. So, yes, it's down here. Oh, did I do it? There, I did. Which hand is this? This one. There. It starts. Oh, here. Oh, look. Ding, 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 ding.
It's not that responsive.
So this is the plot radar that I put together for this week's session. So you can see a couple things that we've got these elements, just for those of you who are not familiar with plot radar, this is plot elements graphed out in relationship to how aware the party is of them, how aware the party is of them, and also how close they are to being encountered or resolved in an upcoming session, right? So stuff that's over here, did I do it right? I think I did it right. Stuff that's over here in closed is stuff that's probably not coming back. It's stuff that they have already addressed and dealt with, and it could be kind of like revivified and become a callback later on down here in the adventure. But for the most part, these are things that they know what it is, they think they understand what it is, and they're not actively investigating those plot elements anymore. And then here is, under immediate, this is our next session, right? So this is what's coming up in the next session. Approaching is the session after, maybe the session after that. So it's 1 or 2 sessions away from next week. And then distant is anything beyond that, right? So distance is something that you know is going to have to be resolved, but it's not coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks at all, right? The final 2 categories, there is, the only reason I can do the space work is because I can see myself on the monitor. So there is dangling. These are elements that have high priority in the minds of the players, but aren't necessarily things that you know where you're going to slot them in terms of where they're going to fall in the plot line, or in terms of the rest of this stuff. Like, I don't know when Thrum is going to fly, but I know it needs to happen, and she is very interested in making this thing happen. So I need to put some energy and some thought into somehow connecting that into the rest of what's going on over here, right? So that's what dangling is. Dormant elements are ones which you have introduced, which the party has forgotten about. So dangling is high player awareness, low GM priority. Dormant is low player awareness, but something that you as a GM meant to have more significance or more of a priority, and it doesn't necessarily currently do that, right? It's sort of like a back burner of things. Like, if you have something that for you as a GM is really important that you need to resolve and the players forget about it, you're in trouble. You need to find ways to start moving that stuff into this dangling or distant, not dangling, into this distant or approaching area. You need to start making connections that bring that thing back into the party's awareness. Because if it's a really pivotal plot moment and the players have forgotten about it, it can't be pivotal. It's really going to, like, it's going to come out of nowhere, or the players are going to feel stupid, like, oh, I forgot about that. How are we supposed to know about that? You're going to get a lot of complaints. It's not like a universal truism that everything the players have to, like, be aware of everything that's going to happen. I certainly believe that a fundamental part of your job is to do twists and turns and reveals and things like that, right? And oftentimes dormant stuff is a great way to do a sudden reveal or a twist. I would suggest that closed and retired things are a better way to do that, because they've been in the players' minds, they've made an impression, the players have satisfactorily resolved them, but then when they come back in a way that they don't expect, they go, oh, that guy, oh, what a dirty dog, or whatever it was, right? Whereas when things are dormant, they've forgotten about it, and so it doesn't make an impression when you do a callback to that, I could do a callback to the kid selling the broken mirror. That would be great. If I do a callback to the person who came out of their house in the purple pants or whatever, who was selling bread, the party's gonna be like, oh yeah, why was that guy, how are we supposed to know that guy was significant? Like, he didn't make any impression. So the callback has less of an impression, right? The callback doesn't have as much significance because the players just weren't aware of it. They didn't have significance for them. So that's what Plot Radar is for, is a way of tracking unresolved or tracking story elements in terms of the player's awareness of them and also their priority and significance within the adventure, right? So that's Plot Radar. Let's run through it quick and take a look at what we've got on for this week. So last week actually 2 weeks ago, we've fairly successfully shut down Imarine's treachery. She was an agent of Slar Cartharel, who is a kraken who lives deep beneath the sea. And that's, I think as far as the party's concerned, that's closed, retired, done with, finished, fine, good. I will point out that just because anything that's on this board is an element that either did make an impression on the players or should be making an impression on the players, right? You don't write it down if there's zero significance to it or if it doesn't have the potential for important significance. So the great thing about doing an analytical breakdown like this is when you start really building it to, over the course of several weeks, you start seeing opportunities to create connections that work their way backwards. So I can look at this and go, yeah, Imarine's treachery is closed and retired. It's done with. And everybody thought that was a session 0 thing that was sort of like a let's get the band together sort of deal or whatever, right? But if I can make a callback to that weeks down the road, the players really think, you've done this genius job of intertwining the plot. Mm-hmm. So it is a way of giving you elements that you can capitalize on or dispense with, right? In this case, do I think Dom Zook and Thargaryon, his wizard for hire, are going to make a comeback and show up someplace else? Probably not. But they could, right? Mm-hmm. I safely put them in the closed and retired category, and I can either choose to bring them back or not at my whim, right? At this point, the elements have been resolved, and their potential is much less.
I was pointing to Dom Zook.
Ooh, very good. Oh, is it? Yeah, right. Yeah, he's over there.
Yeah.
All right. So the immediate column is for what's going to happen this session, right? And as I just discussed, we have some planned encounters, and we have the potential for the party to sort of go off the battle plan and just go into a different direction, right? So start going through the woods and exploring it. And I have some things in mind for the woods. Now, we'll get to that. So in my mind, there are two directions that they could probably go, right? Or that they are likely to go. One is to start hunting down the comet and to go talk to this druid who's mentioned in all of their memories, or not their memories, but in a bunch of the memories. Mm-hmm. Essentially adopt the monk's mission. Or they could just continue going upstream and they could get to the Tower of the Heavens, right? And there's some things going on at the Tower of the Heavens. If you've read the module, you know what it is. And if you haven't, you can...
I'm going to read it right now.
Wait. Hey, that is my original out of shrink wrap mint copy from 1984 and 1885. So those are really essentially two dramatically different directions. They either keep following the river up towards the tower, or they strike off into the forest on their own and go find the druid to get advice on where this comet actually landed. So I kind of have to prepare. You guys are glad that my dog is not connected via smell to the internet because he had one of his moments of extreme relaxation, which is punitive.
When he's been eating French fries.
Yes.
Just imagine
that. Yeah. So those are I have to kind of be prepared to run both of those encounters. Now, in The Adventure as Written, both of those encounters are almost sort of like combat traps or kind of combat-like encounters. I'm trying to minimize combat to a large degree and make things more role-playing encounters because I think that's where a lot more juice is in terms of the story and in terms of the strength of our players and in terms of entertaining you all on the stream. So the good news is I have to have more like what's the core of the role-playing scenes that are going to happen around those things, and not so much like let's have the stats for an awakened brown bear or whatever is in the adventure, right? So that's that. The other things that you'll see on the plot radar here is that there's trouble afoot in the forest, right? There are some things going on in the forest that I'm deliberately not telling you about, so that there's some things that remain a mystery for you, the chat audience, to receive and enjoy and be surprised about, right? Because I've basically given away the entire plot of When a Star Falls here on our chatback stream, but I want you to still have the ability to discover what's going on in the world and explore the world alongside the characters, even though you're getting details direct from me as the DM. So there's trouble afoot in the forest. Now, in my personal analysis, if they go toward the Tower of the Heavens, then let's make that journey fairly straightforward and get to some of the meat of what's going on in the adventure in the Tower of the Heavens. So that means less trouble afoot in the forest. They might notice some things, they might have an encounter, but then they get to the Tower of Heavens. Conversely, if they decide to go visit the Druid and get information about where the comet fell and fulfill the monk's mission of traveling through the wood and getting this thing, then it opens up the possibility more of exploring, okay, well, there's something else going on in the forest. In which case, I want to have a couple encounters, not just like a couple of descriptive things, but a couple encounters that demonstrate and indicate, okay, well, there's something bigger going on here than they're aware of.
Yeah.
It's been foreshadowed quite a bit of like this place was locked off and nobody goes in and people come out and they don't remember what happened and da-da-da-da-da. So we need to pay off that sort of mystery if they actually venture into the forest. But it's also been established that going straight up the river is a fairly safe way to transit the path between Iger's Store and the Tower of the Heavens. So that's where I'm kind of at with the little boxes here that say trouble and more trouble, right? If they decide to go on the monk's mission, then they're going to encounter a lot more of the trouble that's afoot in the forest. Whereas if they decide to go straight to the Tower of the Heavens, let's cut to that scene a lot quicker, right?
Yeah.
Now, next session, not this week, but next session, we should get close to. It's right there. We should either get close to or accomplish one of two things plot-wise from the adventure. I keep referencing the adventure just because that is that little piece of it that sticks out over the top. UK4, as we lovingly refer to it. So they either need to find and recover the star, or they need to free Shalfie in the tower, and we'll find out what's going on with Shalfie at some point. Maybe tomorrow night. But the Master Shalfie, there was the prophecy, there was the vision that he was engulfed in flames. Okay, well we have to pay that off. Essentially, is what's going on there. So that's probably next week, right? And then, in terms of mandatory things that need to happen, further down the line in the distant category, so kind of 2 or 3 sessions away, yes, we either have to trade the star to the Sverfneblen, right, and get that. Or we have to resolve the mystery of what's going on, or we have to resolve the mystery of what's going on with the Grand Druid. That's an extra, that's our B plot, right? So our A plot is, at some point, they are tasked with recovering the comet and then taking it to the Sverfneblen and trading it for another MacGuffin, right? somewhere in here that's distant because it's probably more than 3 sessions out, because in here they have to kind of go back and forth between between the monk's mission of finding the star and the mission of investigating the Tower of the Heavens and resolving that situation, right? So if they go to the tower first, they resolve that situation, then they get sent to go get retrieve the comet and bring it back to the tower. If they go get the comet first, then they take the comet back to the tower, resolve the situation, what's going on there, and then once those 2 items have been clicked off our little plot box, they get sent to go trade the thing with the Swerfnebula, right? Yeah. And bring back the magical MacGuffin from the Swerfnebula. On our B story, somewhere at some point we need to resolve the mystery of what happened to the Grand Druid, so that there's an answer to what's been, honestly, is sort of the A story, right? That's almost the A plot line of go find out what this guy's done, and the adventure itself is almost a B plot line. We talked about the things that are dangling. The only one that we didn't talk about was the skeletal hand in the water. That was something that was foreshadowed, right? In the when they dug that moat or whatever. The other thing that is sort of dangling, or actually is sort of dormant, that I need to bring forward is, I believe they were told that the monks use some sort of magical lantern or something, right, to protect themselves traveling up and down the river. We need to find out what's the status of that. So what do we find in the boat? Like, the monks have a bestiary on them. Is there anything else? Was the lantern snuffed out? Was it sabotaged? Is it still there? Is it something they can use? What's going on with that? But I think we should introduce that element, right? So that's not necessarily dangling. That's more of a dormant element that I need to excavate. And then is Havrick's pride, Havrick was left in a kind of a bit of a bind at the end of last session, or when they left Iger's store. That could either be closed, retired, like we never hear from Havrick again, that's his problem, or we could bring that back as a callback somehow. I've put him as a dormant element. I did have him down, I don't know, you can't see this on your version of it. I did have it down as kind of a spark of oh, what if Havrick somehow was involved in this?
Oh yeah, I cut it.
But that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. So that's,
you crossed it out. So
yeah, no, that's absolutely. I didn't. If they saw it, I'd be like, that's what I crossed out.
I see.
That's what you can't read. So that's where we're at with Plot Radar. I think the important takeaway here is to simplify what the Druid encounters or the Ferryman and Tower encounters could be, so that we don't over prep both of them and then kind of throw some of that prep away, right? And I also am definitely learning that 3 encounters is our limit for the night, right?
Sure.
We never, if we get to that 4th one, it's at 10:45, and then we go overtime. And although the players have been very gracious about that, I don't want to do that on a regular basis.
Right.
So, so I want to keep everything kind of a little bit simple and have some rudimentary notes about what's supposed to happen and how it could play out, right? So plan some potential outcomes. We've talked about this before. Best case, mixed result. What would be a loss for the party that would still put them in an actionable position, right? Those are the things that you want to think. If you can write those 3 things down with some interesting details attached to each one of them, then that's honestly the core prep that you need to do. Putting together monster stats and all that kind of stuff is important, but should take a back seat to, okay, I want to give myself a couple different paths that I could potentially follow and use them in real time to respond back to the players as the play arises at the table. Right? It's a group effort, so I need to be able to respond to what the group does in a way that seems
thanks, Time Caster.
Organic and integrated, right?
Yeah.
So that's the Druid encounter, is going to need a little bit of polishing. it's the trouble afoot in the forest things that are probably going to need more polishing from my point of view, because it's stuff that I'm inventing from whole cloth. It is not something
in there, yeah.
that I'm able to adapt and change and whatnot. But if I can adapt the tower encounters away from you start a fight and you know and start this whole mess, into a little bit maybe more of an intrigue based thing, or there's some alternative solutions available, or the fight is more contained, then I think that's some successful prep that doesn't require me to just prep the whole adventure at once. And that's really my point with planned encounters versus sandbox, right? Because we're in sort of a sandbox mode of they could go down a couple different paths. Let's not overburden ourselves with prep. Let's prep tight and prep smart, and then rely on our instincts as a DM to be able to flesh out the details or add the mechanics to the challenges when the time arises. So I don't know if that's a satisfying answer, but that's my approach for from where I'm sitting in terms of here's where I see. I'll have a much better idea of how the rest of the sessions are going to flow once we get through tomorrow night and they make a decision of we're going to do what the monks were trying to accomplish, or we need to take Talfi to the tower and make sure that they get delivered there. Once that decision has been made, a lot of this other stuff starts to fall into place, and I can start putting it like on the board as, okay, well that's going to be next week, and that'll be the week after, and I'll have a much better idea of how to prioritize my time. Right now, I'm really caught in this sort of precarious position of we didn't get a chance to make a decision either way, or even to process the information that we received at the end of the session last week. So I have to I'm walking this delicate tightrope of like, know a little bit about this and know a little bit about this. The one advantage I will say is I can lean on some of the trouble that's afoot in the forest if I need to. That will open up the environment for them and provide them with some engaging things to investigate. But I do that at the peril of derailing the focus on the A storyline of what's going on in the adventure, right? I'm not saying that that's good or bad, because I think the B storyline is actually going to turn out to be interesting and engaging. But we're going in a lot of different directions right now, so layering all that stuff on top of what the players are processing is a lot of stuff up front. If they can get zeroed in on their mission, at least have a rudimentary kind of core idea of what they're supposed to be doing, then when they get out into the forest and there's this other stuff going on, it's sort of around the periphery of their core mission rather than, it's almost like once they get established on their main mission, that's the path they're going to try and follow, and the other things along the way are little sightseeing bits of points of interest, right? Whereas when they haven't chosen a definitive path, it's almost like they have 3 or 4 paths ahead of them, and they don't know which one is the priority and which one is most interesting. They all seem interesting, right? Well, I want to know about the druid, but I also want to know about the monks. But we also need to take care of Talfi. But also we're seeing these strange lights in the forest or whatever, right? It splits the focus of the party so much that they get analysis paralysis. And they almost will beg you, like, what are we supposed to do? They won't say that out loud because it's verboten, right? That's breaking the metagame, like, what do you want us to do? It's also diminishing their agency. But that also means don't put that choice in front of them too heavily when they haven't made a definitive choice to begin with.
Right.
Lot of philosophy happening today, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see.
So,
we'll see how that.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out,
out.
right? I mean, I don't think this is an uncommon bind for DMs to go like, well, I don't know what they're going to do next. I've had DMs in different games where I've played and whatnot say, can you tell me at least like what you're going to do so that I can prep, you know, the appropriate thing? Yeah. Like they'll send an email saying, what does the party think they're going to do? And I think that's okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to do that here because we want that conversation to happen on a camera for all of you. Mm-hmm. But I think it's okay for a DM to say, hey guys, you know, you've got a couple different choices here. You can either go free the prisoners, or you can try to sneak into the Duke's chamber and overhear the meeting that's happening. Do you know which one you want to pursue? Yeah, actually, you know, give me an axe. When I was running Storm King's Thunder, I would do that in our Facebook group saying, look guys, just let me know which way the party's going to go. Can you have this discussion here?
Yeah.
In my experience, it doesn't always happen with the players. Not everybody checks their email or checks in on the Facebook group or whatever. And then also, more than once, I have been flummoxed by players who are like, we're going to go check in at we're going to go sneak into the Duke's chamber. And then they sit down at the table and there's that one guy who goes, you know, but those prisoners, like, I think my cousin might be in there. Maybe we should, and you're like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's okay to, I think this is a situation that DMs often find themselves in this kind of bind. I think for you in your home game, you can help yourself out by being a little bit proactive and asking for information outside of the play session. In this particular case, I don't think it's acceptable because I don't want those decisions to be made off camera. I'd like to see the group. For one thing, we've got a lot of information that's in two characters' hands, right?
Yeah.
Like Strumthrum and Lowstorm have some of the memories, like 1 or 2, but Alton is like sitting with like 15 of them, and Badger is sitting with like 5 or something like that. Like, I don't know. But yeah, Alton is really loaded down. And so it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out at the table of what Alton thinks is the priority versus what he's learned, how much they all share with one another, etc. So, I mean, I will say, I think when I'm planning out the beats for tomorrow night of what might possibly happen, I need to give a proper amount, pay a proper amount of respect to the mop-up after this combat, the processing of the clues that they have received, whether that's the physical items that they recover from the boat, like and the corpses, or whether that is the clues that they have had psychically imprinted upon them. So that's an easy thing to overlook. Like, oh yeah, and then let's see. So we'll just pick up where we left off, and then we'll get into like see which way they want to go. No, we will not just pick up where we left off. Right. We will pick up where we left off, and then process some of the clues and outcomes. That does provide an opportunity, right? When you sit down and look at that and go, oh, okay, we have to work through some of this denouement. I can now build clues into the boat that might lead them in one direction or another, or give them more information about one direction or another, or foreshadow like some of the trouble that's afoot in the forest and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's not just sort of like a roadblock or a stumbling point where you go, well, then they're going to have to kind of sit around and talk for 20 minutes about the weird memories that they got and whatnot. No, it's also an opportunity to introduce and kind of flesh out more information about what's going on with various situations, right? Whether it's that druid or the tower or the forest.
Yeah, I like that there's enough interplay here, but not too much. You know, that there's enough connection that if they go one way, they'll still come around to another way. You know what I mean? Like if they go after the druid or whatever, they're not going to be so far away from starting the tower. You know, that will lead back into it and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think so. You know, I mean, this isn't. I don't think a classic sandbox, right? This is more of like a hex crawl of like we need to find point A, and then once we get to point A, we go to point B, and then we go to point C, and then we go to point D, and then, you know, it really is a fairly linear adventure, and it's not that much of a sandbox. It's just mostly like go through all this terrain that's like mountains and encounter these weird, you know, tribes people and whatnot.
Right.
I think it's actually like the way that it's sitting right now. It's more sandboxy the way that I'm presenting it.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
Yeah, these early adventures.
It's like a bounded sandbox, right? Like there's it's like the classic any RPG video game where it's like you can choose answer B, but eventually it leads you back around to what you would have happened if you chose answer C.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. All right, well, we will find out how all of this plays out tomorrow night, right here at 8 o'clock Pacific on Saving Throw. Tonight at 8 o'clock, we have Boring Old Tyler. That's his Twitter handle, not his literal honorific.
Yeah.
He self-anointed himself as boring and old. We think he's a young and dynamic GM with a lot of promise ahead of him. One day he'll be level 3, just like me.
Yeah.
You can watch him running his Starfinder game tonight here at 8 o'clock. Do you have anything about the Starfinder game that you want to tease or share?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But there are some interesting things that are happening in this campaign, and some people who may show up.
There's not a lot of other streams out there running Starfinder either, to my knowledge.
Not
right?
a ton.
Yeah.
There's some good podcasts out there, but not a ton of live action.
So if you are curious about Paizo's new science fiction game, tune in tonight at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow night, tomorrow at 3, we'll be doing a rerun of the Starfinder game. So if Pacific time is too late for you, I completely understand. So you can watch the rebroadcast of the VOD tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Tomorrow night at 8 is our show. And then we'll have a rerun of that on Thursday at 3 as well, for those of you who are on a coast or in a time zone that is not hospitable to staying up until 11 o'clock Pacific time. Right. To be fair, I consider myself to be in a time zone that is not hospitable to staying up until 11 o'clock. Yeah. And yet here I am gutting it out for you people. Yeah. It's not too early to start thinking about Gen Con. I know we just wrapped up Origins. We were not there, but if you do exclamation point Gen Con, you can see what our schedule is for the con. My work life has gotten a little bit too hectic to attend, so I will not be there. But Dom and most of the rest of our all-star cast and crew will be there. Amy, Havana, Garav, Jordan, and Megan.
Huge contingent of Save and Throw people.
Yeah. So check that out.
And yes, at Gamehole Con.
Yes, we will be at Gamehole Con. In fact, I think I am going to take the opportunity here to give you a little preview of, not preview, I'm going to tease what we're planning at Gamehole Con. Dom and Amy and Garav will be playing. I will be DMing. We haven't figured out exactly who we're going to fill in the last chair or chairs with, but we'll be doing part of the Extra Life stream that D&D Beyond is producing at Gamehole Con. So are we Saturday at 10? Is that what time it is?
I think so.
I can't remember exactly when the time is. If you go to gameholecon.com, you can look at the schedule. If you're not a very important guest, you can't actually sign up for anything yet. But be that as it may, we're going to be doing a charity stream for 3 or 4 hours, and I am going to run a reverse dungeon. So all of the players will be monsters who find themselves in charge of doing defending the dungeon from the intrusions of the Goody Two-Shoes adventurers. So I think that's it's not necessarily the most original concept. It's certainly been done before, and various people have had the same idea. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I do think it'll be a fun opportunity for chat to do things like donate and make the adventurers stronger, or make the player characters more monstrous, or give them more traps to deploy throughout the dungeon. I never played the old Dungeon Keeper PC game. Do you remember that?
That was a blast.
Yeah. But that's what we're planning to do at Gamehole Con.
It'll be for Extra Life, so it will be a good cause.
Yes, yes.
Also, our Wildcards game at Gen Con, if you can make it, will also be for Extra Life. We are, as far as I know, the only one doing a charity stream there. So we'd appreciate it. You can watch and donate live, or you can attend and donate live.
Yes.
But that will be at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Friday at Gen Con. So we're still a little ways away, but
start making your plans.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Speaking of donations and whatnot, I want to give a big shout out. I want to thank everybody who watched, everybody who contributed, everybody who spread the word about our big Alzheimer's longest day marathon, streaming marathon. Thanks to you, we raised over $7,000 for the Alzheimer's Association, and as I hope you know, that is a charity that is near and dear to my heart. I regretfully was not able to run a game this year. That was on me, but I did make a contribution. And it's not too late if you would like to make a contribution. You can still donate to our team and kick in some money that goes to a great cause. It's not something that we're doing to help keep the lights on here or anything like that. It's just literally something that's important to a lot of us here at Saving Throw Show. So thank you to everyone who tuned in or spread the word or was helping mod and whatnot. We had a lofty goal, but we raised over $7,000, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah.
So
we can still hit that goal. Actually,
it's true.
If you guys,
I think we're about $2,500 away. So if you get 99 other friends to kick in $25, or 1,000 friends to donate $2.50.
It could happen.
It could happen.
I mean, how many friends do you
I don't know
have
what
on
your Twitter
Facebook?
following is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But yes, thank you so much for supporting our efforts here and supporting the efforts of the Alzheimer's Association. We really appreciate that. I do want to thank our mods, Farquaad, and I want to thank Clipmaster Extraordinaire, DJ Regular, and all of our regulars who show up here in the chat here today and help keep things safe, friendly, clean, and accessible for all the new faces that we find popping up on our channel. I want to thank everybody who's subscribed to our Patreon, or big shout out to Time Kaiser for kicking us some bits and whatnot. Appreciate that. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. We're going to have a fun session tomorrow night. So that's it from the command console here aboard the good ship Saving Throw. Let's dungeon! Oh, you had to do it right when the actual dungeon started, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, exclamation point 100.